Terry Gilliam. Je vous demande de l'accueillir chaleureusement avec Caroline.
Thanks. Thank you.
Hello, Terry. Hello, Terry. You're dead?
I was briefly.
Oh, good.
Alors, t'es mort, Terry? Oui, pendant un petit moment.
Actually, do you know the story of being killed by Variety magazine?
Oh, no, you're going to tell us about it.
Am I? Oh. This happened several years ago. Variety came out and it said Terry Gilliam, animator of Monty Python, dies in XXX. And they had my obituary, everything. They had reviews of my films. The obituary was as bad as many of the reviews of my films.
So talking about obituaries, what did you think when you see your whole career in 10 minutes?
I need to get a life. I don't watch my films, so watching that in many ways surprised me because I forget what I've done. I don't want to linger in the past. I'm always thinking about what I can do next.
What was interesting is that you were laughing at your own jokes.
They're good jokes.
So when did you know that cinema was the way you're going to express yourself? Because you draw, you write. When did you know that was cinema for you?
I don't know. I mean, I always loved movies, and I never thought one could ever make them. It seemed too difficult and too unknown territory. And it was only when we were doing Monty Python and we're on television, and suddenly you get confident, you get involved thinking this could happen. And then when various famous musical groups like Pink Floyd, Led Zeppelin, Elton John offered us money to make Monty Python the Holy Grail, Terry Jones and Terry also was keen to direct movies, and we said to the others in the group, anyone named Terry should be able to direct this movie, and the others agreed with us. And what happens when you do that, I mean, Terry and I learned on the job is what we did. But the good thing was that at the end of the film, it comes up directed by Terry Jones and Terry Gilliam, and we were film directors, and people believed because we got the credit that we knew what we were doing.
You started with animation, where basically you were a god. You were doing everything you wanted. What did it change for you to go to live action?
I didn't think pieces of paper were as interesting as living people. The animations, because they were cut out, I had to work very quickly. So the only technique that seemed to work in the time and the money available was to use cutouts. And it's a very limited technique as far as I'm concerned. So, yeah, so what happened then? Yeah, I felt we got into the job of doing it. And once you direct a film, it's very addictive.
Et finalement, on s'est lancé et quand on commence à réaliser des films, on devient accro.
Did acting with a Python help you directing your actors?
Est-ce que jouer avec les Monty Python t'a aidé ensuite à diriger des acteurs?
No, they're terrible. They don't take direction. And that was the joy when I made Jabberwocky. Suddenly I had all these wonderful actors doing what I asked them to do. And it's the reason I didn't co-direct with Terry Jones' Life of Brian.
You had a lot of incredible actors playing for you. Can you tell us a little about the way you choose them? Do you write for them? Do you choose them afterwards? Robin Williams, Johnny Depp, we've seen many, Jonathan Pryce, Adam Driver. And I've forgotten Jeff Bridges, of course.
I start looking for actors who are successful enough to bring the money to the film. No, but I really want to work with wonderful actors. They inspire me. They are incredible. And so I'm very careful about the people I actually work with. I've got to like them. We've got to spend time together, realizing we can think together and think about the same kind of film that we're trying to make. And it's as simple as that. And I think my instincts about people are probably maybe my best talents. I'm very good at choosing people who I think are going to be good and right for the films we're making. They've got to have good senses of humor. And I keep telling, we just want to play. That's what we're doing. We're playing. We are called players. And I choose people that can play. That's what it's about.
Well, you say you're looking for money, but when we get Robert De Niro in Brazil, we hardly see him. He has mask and then he disappears. Tell us about that.
We got the money. Who cared? There was an element in my mind, the idea of having probably one of the most famous actors on the planet and keeping him covered up through the entire movie.
And you also had Michael Palin. I want you to talk about that because he's absolutely incredible in that part.
Well, I mean, Mike plays in Brazil, you know, Jack Lint, the torturer, a very bad man, but I didn't want to play him as a villain or an evil person. Because he is, so you don't play. And Michael is one of the nicest people on the planet, a really genuine, wonderful human being. And so the idea of him being the torturer makes sense to me, because he was just supporting his family. He was just doing a job. And he has this wonderful family, a beautiful wife, 2 or 3 children, he can't remember which. And so at that level, he was just a career guy who was very innocent, except the job was an evil, horrible, brutal thing.
Well, we're all curious to know also about Robin Williams, because what you did with him, you're very faithful to your actors. You've worked with them several times. That was the case for Robin. That was Jeff Bridges also. Tell us about that.
Robin was the savior of Dr. Parn. I mean, I don't mean, what films have I made? Can you give me some titles?
I didn't see your film, I don't know. Yeah.
Baron Munchausen. Robin was first on Munchausen. He saved the movie because the budget had gone out of control. Originally, the King of the Moon was played by Sean Connery. There were 2,000 people on the moon, all who, at the eclipse, lost their heads and their bodies ran around doing bodily functions. The Bond company, who are the people who have to ensure the film will be finished, had said to me that the Baron could not go to the moon. And I said, the Baron will go to the moon. We had to stop the film for several weeks while I argued this point. At one point, I was going to have the Baron fly off in his balloon boat thing, arrive on a sandy beach, and then walk through a door into my office at the studio. And I would then read the script to the camera about what we had planned to do before the film's budget had pulled us out. Anyway, when Sean discovered there were only 2 people on the moon, he said, I don't want to be king of 2 people. And Eric Idle had become a very good friend of Robin's. And he said, Robin, would you come in and play the part of the moon? And Robin was a big Python fan. And he said, yes. And what, in the scene of him as King of the Moon, what happened there, when you see the film, it's just these sort of flat buildings moving back and forth. That's all. Nothing is happening other than that until he appears. And those buildings were basically the plans, the drawings of the buildings we were going to be building in 3 dimensions, and they were going to be gigantic. So that was not at all the original plan. And Robin arriving was also not the original plan. But what he did was ad-lib so much of what he's saying in the film was him ad-libbing. And it's one of my favorite scenes in the film now. It had very little to do with what I was planning to do. That's actually one reason I like making films where things go wrong, because I'm very careful in planning what we are going to do, and then things don't happen the way I would like them, or nature interferes. And when things go wrong, I get very angry, and my adrenaline starts swelling up, and I'm like this. And somehow, interesting ideas pop out of that madness. And they've almost always been better than my original plans. And we won't go into Dr. Parnassus yet.
No, but we can go into Brazil. You had a lot of problem on Brazil, especially with the ending. And can you remember the ending of Brazil? And can you tell us what happened with the American distributor?
Oh, you mean no, the film ended as I wanted. What happened, of course, though, we finished the film. It had already opened in Paris. We got wonderful reviews in Paris, but Universal had the film for North America, and they didn't like the film. It was very funny. I went and watched it at the studio, and I was in the projection booth looking at the backs of the heads of all the executives. And as the film went on, their necks got thicker, the muscles got bigger, their skin went redder. They hated it. And then they came out after the film to see me and said, "Oh, it's wonderful. It's fascinating. It's very interesting." And they wanted me to change the film. They wanted it to have a happy ending. And they actually stopped us from release. Well, they were releasing the film, but they put an embargo on the whole thing. We couldn't talk to anybody about it. We couldn't get help. And I said to Arnon, the producer, he said, "We'll have to get lawyers involved." And I said, "No, they have all the lawyers in the world. They have all the time. They have all the money. We have to have some fun." And so I did something that is not normally done in Hollywood. I bought a page in Variety, the same magazine that killed me later. And I surrounded it with a black border like a funeral announcement. And it said, "Dear Sid," in small type in the middle, because normally those pages are full of nothing but millions of dollars. In dollars, how much money this film has made or lost. And on this big blank page with the black funereal border, I wrote, "Dear Sid Scheidberg, when are you going to release my film Brazil?" Signed, Terry Gilliam. Sid Scheidberg was the boss of Universal, and they didn't know what to do. Nobody does that in Hollywood. These things are normally done behind the scenes with secret meetings, but I did it, and it began an interest from the press in what was going on. And so the next thing I did, thanks to Robert De Niro, we went on ABC television, Good Morning America. And Bobby never did promotion for films, but he was such a loyal partner in this thing. He came on television. They really wanted an interview with Robert De Niro, not Terry Gilliam. So the interview starts, and Bobby's being asked a question, and Bobby is not very articulate in front of a television camera. And it was yes, no, yes, maybe. And then they turned to me and said, "Terry, I understand you're having a problem with the studio." And I said, "I don't have a problem with the studio. I have a problem with one man. His name is Sid Sheinberg, and he looks like this." And I ran up to the camera with an 8x10 black and white glossy of Sid and shoved it in the face of America. We have fun, don't we? So anyway, after months and months, we finally did get the film released. It was released in just a couple cinemas on the East Coast, New York, Boston, places like that, who in those cities had been following the activity in the press, the noise we were making. And what happened over the Christmas holidays, we, per seat, did more business than any other movie. We didn't even have posters. We had facsimiles of some artwork of what might be used. Anyway, as a result of this, the studio suddenly thought maybe they were wrong, and the film had a big audience of waiting to see it. And so they started releasing it in cities in the middle of nowhere. Jackson Hole, this shit place, horrible. And of course, nobody came, because who wanted to see a documentary about a South American country? So that was it. So Brazil has never made me any money. That's a fact.
Do you think that movie changed your career and your life forever? And if so, why?
It saved me from prison time in Tokyo. It's true, because the 20th Century Fox was sending me around the world to promote the movie, and they sent me to Japan. And at that point, I was used to being picked up in a car in the morning, taken to an airport, put on a plane, somebody meets at the other end. When I got to Japan, they said, "Can we see your visa?" What visa? I didn't know, because 20th Century Fox somehow had forgot that I was an American and not a British. And Americans needed visa, and British didn't. I didn't know the name of the local distributors. I didn't have a telephone number to call. The driver didn't know. I didn't know who even the driver was. I knew nothing. The police are getting more and more curious about me. So I'm dragged into the back room, the one with the big table and the big whips. I couldn't give them any more information other than the fact I was in Japan illegally. And then I remembered Time magazine. I had a copy with me, and Brazil was reviewed in it. And it was a great review. And I said to the Japanese guys, "This is who I am. Here, Time magazine, great review." They took it into the other room, and they were gone for a long time. And I'm sitting here. And they came back in, having read the review, and realized I was okay. So sorry. And I was swept out to my limousine and taken to a hotel. It's very nice to get a good review occasionally.
That means that the press is useful.
Sometimes, yes.
You know, Brazil was a huge influence on many directors. Are you aware of that?
Influence, or do they just copy? Yeah, I know. I wish it had more influence on me.
I wanted to go back to Jeff Bridges. You have a wonderful relationship with him. I think that in Fisher King, he looks really like you. Do you agree on that?
I wanted to look like Jeff Bridges, but I didn't think I achieved that. But what happened in the film, Jeff was just wonderful to work with, just brilliant. And it was only when the film was finished that people who had worked on the film said, "Don't you know what he's been doing?" And I said, "What are you talking about?" "He's been copying you the whole time." So when I die and somebody makes a film about me, hire Jeff.
But you killed him in Thailand.
Of course.
Yeah, and he was a wonderful corpse.
In Thailand, which I'll bet most of you have not seen. Actually, how many people have seen Thailand? Hands? Whoa! These are real fans. Anyway, Jeff is dead through most of the movie. And we built this model of him so that Jodelle Ferland, the little girl, who has to climb all over him and talk to him and play with him while he's dead, we would use that. And Jeff was just wonderful. He said, no, it will be better for her if I am the actual corpse. And that's what he did. And he would sit there. We did long takes sometime with her, crawling all over him, talking to him. And he had a shirt that was open so you could see his chest moving or not moving. It never moved. It was extraordinary because these long takes, several minutes, would be going on, nothing. And at the end, I'd say cut, and suddenly Jeff would, from dead, oh, that was wonderful. I went so deep that time.
And Thailand is probably your darkest film. How did you pull that off? You know, you had a hard time with the ending of Brazil, but how could you do Thailand?
Thailand was a book written by a man named Midge Collett. And he sent it to me, hoping he'd get a quote for the cover of the book, say, Terry Gilliam likes his, thinks it's extraordinary. I basically said, Terry Gilliam thinks it's fucking wonderful. And so Tony Grisoni and I wrote a script of the book. And so it is what it is. I think we added elements of Alice in Wonderland, the book, and things in it. But it's basically this wonderful book of this little girl just at the cusp of puberty, ending up in a very strange situation. And the girl I found was a girl named Jodelle Ferland, who is Canadian, and I think she was 9 years old, playing somebody that should have been maybe 12. And she's absolutely extraordinary. It's an extraordinary performance. She's central to the film. What was interesting when we were casting, trying to find young girls who still had innocence as part of their makeup. It was very difficult because even at 10 years old, they were already wiggling their ass around the place, doing all these cool adult things. And I said, these girls are not innocent. Anyway, I found Jodelle, and you have to see the film. She's astonishing in it. And afterwards, I sort of let people in Hollywood see her saying, this is the best child star out there. And nobody responded.
You talk a lot about Hollywood. What is your relationship with Hollywood nowadays?
I have none. I don't know people. I have no agent out there. I still have friends, but that's it. I made a big mistake, I think. I'm very happy not to be working with or for or at Hollywood.
To go back to Don Quixote and, Lost in La Mancha. For me, Lost in La Mancha is an horror movie. It's very painful to see because everything goes wrong. Do you consider that documentary as a Terry Gilliam movie?
I wish Jeff Bridges had played me in it. Yeah, it's a very good documentary. It really is. It captured the reality of what we went through.
And in the documentary, you said Don Quixote might have been better staying in my head or something like that. Do you still believe that?
It's what I love about obsession. Things work their way into you. They somehow captivate your imagination, and they do not leave until you do something with them. And the fact we finally, after 27 years, I think, we finally finished the film, is all those years I kept trying, failing, and that is exactly what the book is about. Quixote's got this idealized view of the world, sense of nobility, decency, and he keeps failing. It's a book about failure, but failure that you hit the ground and then you get up and continue. And that's what that experience was.
But also, you say you want to have fun. And it's also it's very painful.
Fun can be painful, yes, especially if you're a sadomasochist.
So that's what you need to be a director, a sadomasochist?
I don't encourage anybody to be a film director. I think, unfortunately, too many people become film directors without being obsessive or passionate. And often those are the ones that are the most successful. The job is, to me, very interesting. It's I don't like using the word artist, but I think that is what an artist is and does. You become obsessed, you become possessed by an idea, a dream, a vision, and you then try to spread it around the world. That's what you do.
There were TV series, for example, on some of your movies. I'm thinking of 12 Monkeys. Were you ever interested in working on them and on doing TV, for example?
No. Will that do? I didn't see the 12 Monkey TV series. I wasn't interested because I know what we made, and I know somebody was going to make something completely different. I don't know if it's good or bad. It did 2 or 3 series, which is interesting. So it was obviously reasonably good. I just wasn't interested.
And you'd never been interested in doing something with other medium, like, for example, TV or VR. We were talking about VR. For you, it's movies now.
This is what I like, seeing all of these people sitting here sharing this experience, whatever that is up there. I'm so worried about people becoming more and more isolated. That's what social media really does. That's what video's doing. It's also, at one point, people were encouraging me to do VR, virtual reality, and that's even more isolated, and I don't want to do that. I don't want to even encourage that.
Zero Theorem is a bit about that. Your movie Zero Theorem.
About aloneness.
When you look at your career, is there things you would do differently nowadays, looking back?
No, not at all. I think I've been very, very lucky. I've gotten away with more murder than most serial killers do. The only thing I wouldn't do again, and I encourage none of you to do, is work with a man called Paulo Branco. A man who was involved in The Man Who Killed Don Quixote for all of 4 months, who then claimed that he was the producer of the movie. I've been involved in court cases in the French court system for 7 years now. We have won. He isn't part of the film in any way, but that's 7 years wasted time and money.
But Don Quixote, you've got the film now, and that's what's wonderful. Are you proud of it when you watch at it?
No, I think we did a great job. I think everybody in the film is so good. I think Jonathan and Adam are breathtaking. And very few people saw it, thanks to this man. What was his name? Branco. Paulo Branco. Asshole premier.
So, are you still a movie buff, Terry? Do you watch movies, and which kind of movies do you watch? Or are you just fed up with all of them?
My wife and I went finally and saw a movie after a very long time together, Barbie. We won't be going back. The Coen brothers make a movie, if Quentin Tarantino makes a movie, if Park Chan-wook, Bong, I will go and watch their films, but there's so many films that I find disappointing, uninteresting, unexciting, and they're all doing pretty good business, and that's sad. I get depressed easily.
So to go back on something more positive, let's not kill ourselves before they see Brazil, please. Thank you. When you look at your career, if you had to choose one movie to show to someone who doesn't know you at all, which will it be?
Oh my God. For the fun of it, I asked them to watch Thailand. Because I love watching so many people in the first 5 minutes walk out. What don't they find interesting about a little 9-year-old girl preparing heroin for her father? You don't get to see that in many films these days. So come on. Now, my problem is I don't choose my films. They're all I love them all and I hate them all equally.
There is no one film you're especially proud of. Well, obviously I think about Brazil, because that was probably the first film which made you very well known all over the world.
It'll probably be the film on my gravestone, unfortunately.
On Jeff Bridges' gravestone.
On Jeff's, yeah. I really don't know. My problem is I don't watch my movies. I actually had to watch Brazil 2 or 3 weeks ago for the first time in maybe 10 or more years. Yeah. And I guess I've been watching Netflix too often. So the rhythms of the film were not the rhythms I'm used to watching series on Netflix. So it confused me. It was a very odd film, I felt. Strangely, I had to also, because we've done a new 4K version of The Adventures of Baron Munchausen, so I had to watch that a couple months ago to check the technical aspects. And I thought it was an utterly wonderful, fabulous movie. I was suddenly proud of one of my movies. The problem is I don't watch my movies because when I do, I only see the mistakes, all the bits that didn't work. But I really felt about Munchausen, it was perfect. I apologize.
So you were right to send him to the moon.
Very much so.
When you watch your films sometimes like that, do you see your life in them?
No, I don't really, because I think those bits of my lives when I was making those become history, and I'm not interested in my history. That's the simple fact. I mean, I basically live in the now. That's the only thing that really interests me, and then hopefully a bit of a future before I die. That would be nice.
And so what do you want to do before you die? Do you have any movies in your head or in your computer?
The movie I would really love to make is called Defective Detective. And it was written by Richard LaGravenese, who wrote Fisher King and myself after that film. And it's been trapped in the belly of Paramount Pictures for all these years, and we can't get it out. They're never going to make it, but they will make sure that nobody else will get to make it. And that's what Hollywood is really like. I've written another film with a young theater writer in England. It's called The Carnival at the End of Days. It's all about God, who decides to wipe out, destroy humanity from making a mess of his beautiful garden that we call Earth. And the only person trying to save humanity is Satan. Because without people, he's got no job. And as an eternal being, that is a boring, long life of eternity, not really having people to play with. I don't want to give away the ending, but God does wipe out humanity. However, Satan has found a young couple who is trying to convince God that these will be the new Adam and Eve, and we can start all over again, see if we do it better this time. I'm looking for money.
But you're not only doing movies, you're also doing operas. For money or because you like it? Pour l'argent ou parce que t'aimes ça?
Trying to get a new job is what it's about. I've made 2 operas. Both were by Berlioz, who I'm fascinated by. And one was the Damnation de Faust, and the other was Benvenuto Cellini. Faust played at the Bastille Opera, and Cellini's played many places as well. And it was a completely different world. Opera, I know nothing about opera. What was interesting when we did Faust, the first one, it was an opera that had been a failure. Berlioz had basically taken 8 symphonic pieces he had written and assembled them into the Faust story. And it was never successful. So I thought, well, I'll have a go. Let's see if I can do better than Berlioz did. And because I know nothing about opera, I don't have the weight of responsibility on my shoulder. And it was the English National Opera Company, which is based in a place called the Coliseum in London. And what is great about the Coliseum, it was originally an old music hall theater, which burlesque would play there. singing and dancing dogs would play there. And so I said, we're not doing an opera, we're doing a show. This is showbiz, folks. And I brought in a lot of people who work in the circus. And we did it. And the big surprise, it was a huge success. The bigger surprise and the better surprise, 41% of the audience had never been to the opera before. There was one more success. At the last night of the show, there was, in the queue for buying tickets, there was a physical fight between two people trying to get the last ticket. Success.
Like here for the Masterclass, they were fighting.
Was it? Yeah. I was trying to keep people out.
Do you think that humor will save us?
No. I think it's our most important sense. Your sense of smell, sense of touch. I would fight most of all to maintain my sense of humor, especially as the world becomes more absurd the longer I live. I mean, we're living in a nonsense time almost. It's very weird. We're powerless, most of us, for one thing. And if you don't have power, at least have a sense of humor about your lack of power.
That's something that's extraordinary with you, is that you're very often depressed, but you still have an incredible energy. Where did you find it? Where do you find it?
Drugs. So, I couldn't wait. The problem is, when I made Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, I've never taken acid, a bit of dope occasionally, but that's nothing. Cocaine I despise. Heroin I've never touched. And I said I wanted to take some acid when we finished Fear and Loathing, and I've never done it. And I'm really disappointed in myself. When we made Fear and Loathing, and when people saw it, they thought we had been on drugs the whole time. Wow, what a wild time. And there's Johnny with coke in his nostrils the whole time. And I said, it wasn't cocaine, it was powdered milk. And I said he had sniffed so much of this stuff, he was growing breasts.
How was the shooting of Fear and Loathing? Because Las Vegas is so crazy, and you're crazy, and they were crazy. So
I basically said we were sharks. We had to live like sharks, behave like sharks. We couldn't ever stop. It was a very tight schedule, and literally there was no reshooting, there was nothing, no looking back. You just roared forward, and the energy, I think, is in the film.
And Johnny Depp is incredible. That's the first time he's not good looking.
I have a very good friend in London named Ruby Wax. She's a brilliant comedian. And she said, I hate you, Terry. You're the first, Fear and Loathing is the first film, and you made it, that made Johnny Depp unfuckable.
But what is the current Terry Gilliam day? Now you're writing, you're drawing, you're getting ready for a new film. Say yes to that, please.
Well, at the moment I'm here in Strasbourg having a wonderful time, and I did it because my life is so miserable and empty back in London. So thank you.
Is it nice to be adored like that?
You don't want to get used to it. No. It's something, it's very funny. A friend of mine who you may or may not know is a wonderful percussionist called Ray Cooper. He's been with Elton John on the multiple lifetime tours. And when I was doing the opera, and at the end of the show, the curtain comes up, and this great bow, and the audience is standing up and all that. He says, isn't that the most wonderful thing? And I said, no, I don't want to need it. I do not want to need that applause. So please don't applaud at the end of this.
Merci beaucoup.